To our first attempt at E equals Y live stream on a Friday morning. Typically we've had some technical issues, haven't we, Tracy?
Oh, it's always a learning experience.
Absolutely. So, each week I typically have been putting a video out, which is some leadership nuggets, but I thought it would be fun if we actually tried this live and learn something new. I was actually talking to my coach about it, and she's like, "Why do you want to do this?" I'm like, "Well, I want to get our message out, but I also want to stretch and learn and try something new." So, the best way to learn is to try and then learn on what works well and what doesn't. So, anyway, as ways of introduction, let's get started there. So, I'm Kathy Eastwood, CEO and founder of E equals Y. Personally, I started my career as a CPA, but I've held multiple roles across most functions within an organization, whether it's sales, marketing, R&D. I've even been a chief people officer. But my passion has always been around leadership and driving change. And I'm joined today by Tracy, who is also someone that is very passionate about leadership. Tracy, you want to do an introduction of yourself?
Sure. Let's see. I like to start with I'm an artist, and the reason why I start there is it's actually art that got me into learning and development. Many, many years ago in college, I was a psychology major and intentionally, or at the time, initially had decided I wanted to become a doctor. And so it was pre-med, but then shifted later on for different reasons I won't get into here. But I first started teaching art, and that evolved into going into the corporate world and working with folks, nurses initially, and technology. And so I've always been into technology. And then that evolved into a passion for learning and development and working with people. And, one of the things that I've come to realize lately is how important it is, how freeing it is to bring our whole selves to any experience that we have. And I think back to leadership, leaders that I've had, and my own struggles as a leader. I have not always gotten it right, and how important it is to be able to be yourself, and that creates the space for others too as well. And so we spend so much time at work, instead of it being something we dread or something we do to fund the rest of our lives. Wouldn't it be great if we could have a joyful, positive experience in all parts of our life? So I was drawn initially to the work that you're doing with E equals Y because of that similar passion and changing the world and changing the way we operate in business. And that's something that was just super, super exciting to me.
Yeah, well,
To be here. Yeah.
thanks, Trace. And I'm so excited you're joining me because, Tracy and I are going to be co-facilitating the E3 Leadership Bootcamp that's starting a week from Monday, so January 30th. And it's a live 4-session course where we really explore leadership, right? And we really look at how do you bring your whole self to leadership. And it's interesting. I was talking to someone after the last course, and they said to me, Kath, it's really interesting how I assumed I had to fit a model that leaders looked and acted a certain way. And you really helped us understand that, no, I can show up and be my whole self. And if I have a lot of empathy and passion and compassion for others, then, I can bring that. It's okay. I don't have to be this, running to the fire and directive. I can have both. And that's what leadership is, right? When you think
Mm,
about the best leader you've ever had,
mm,
it's someone that is authentic,
yeah.
that you get along with, right? That's courageous. And that's really what we're focused on doing. And I love, you and I have very different energy that we bring to the table. But I find it just a lot of fun. And you talk about passion and like why I started doing this,
Mm.
and I have the stupid poopy head story that I often tell. And I don't want anyone to have to work for stupid poopy head like I did.
Mm.
And, drilling in a little bit, it was like, who is Stupid Poopy Head? He was a leader that I had that really was command and control, just
Mm.
would tell you what to do without the why, without any consideration, extremely selfish, wanted to get the results, but the results were to make sure he looked good. And
Mhm.
I ended up in a very toxic, my emotional and physical well-being was actually impacted by all of it. And so when I had been in corporate for all these years, I'd been running a lot of change initiatives and knew that you had to focus on people and cared about leadership. But that moment when I left, and by the way, 4 other people resigned on the same day as
Mm.
me. So almost half the team, if that tells you anything. I wanted to really go out there and figure out how we could impact all of the stupid poopy heads and get rid of them all. Because Tracy, I think about your daughter. I want her to go into an environment
Yeah.
where she knows she's going to be working for someone that cares, someone that is going to be focused on her growth. It is about results, right? Teams have to deliver results, but there's different ways to deliver results.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm reminded of a quote that's been coming to me lately from a very questionable movie. But essentially, somebody asked somebody, how did you get to be so successful as this business leader? And the character in the film says, well, I'm business is about people and I'm really good at people. And that's just something that's always sat with me because, yes, it is about results and we need to drive results and those sorts of things, create results in our own lives, but also in business. But the way we go about it can really make a big difference in bringing people along and creating a space where people don't dread to go to work, but they're actually excited about being there and what you're trying to achieve. The other part, in addition to being an artist and focused on leadership development, I'm also a coach. And so, I've spent many, many years working on and investing in myself and my own journey as a means to support others in theirs. And so much of what I've learned on my own personal journey has been about how to be myself and what that looks like and what it doesn't look like and how to catch myself when I'm not. And it sounds so simple, but it is so profound in many ways. And sometimes it's just that subtle shift of thinking differently about how we're showing up that can make a huge difference on everyone around us. I think about the times when I didn't get it right in my leadership journey. And often it was because I was trying too hard to be everything to everybody. And what did that do? That created a space where nobody knew how I was going to show up. Who is this person, right? And trying, to do all these things and trying too hard in a lot of ways, and it just didn't end up serving anybody, and it ended up creating the end result I was trying to avoid, which was a team where I didn't really have a strong foundation of trust, right? So I've had a lot of battle scars and a lot of lessons along the way, and being able to share that with other people and, to your point, help others jumpstart their journeys or maybe course correct somewhere where they just might not be getting the results that they're looking for. um, Sometimes it can be a simple set of questions or tools that can have a really profound effect. So that's something I've really been enjoying in my journey lately.
Well, it's funny you say tools, right? Because what's popping into my mind as you're saying all this is the E3 leadership profile that we've
Yeah.
created,
Mm.
right? And I remember when I first started looking at personally my own introspection, like you're talking about. And one of the questions someone asked me was, what were your values?
Mm.
And I'm like, oh, this will be easy. And I sat down and I'm like, oh yeah, I like, inspiring people. I like to, get things done. I'm result oriented, right? So it's easy to put words to it, but it was really the exploration behind it to understand the why.
Mm.
And, with the leadership profile that we've built for others to use, it's a tool to do that self exploration, right? To
Yeah.
understand, what are your values and why are they? What are your non-negotiables? How do you think about them? What are your goals? How do you like to work? There's a lot of things that really impact us when we come into the workplace that's different for everyone. And we
Mhm.
don't want to have a mold, right?
Right,
So
right.
um, it reminds me of, we were doing the boot camp recently, and the story, it was more the story when the
Mm,
CEO went through his values and started talking about going back into his childhood,
yeah.
you know, and the why he feels this way and needs everyone to show up. And it's powerful to the team sitting around the table going, oh,
I'm working with a human.
yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Yep, and then also the, oh, so it's not just words.
Yeah.
There's reason when you say integrity,
Mm,
there's a story behind this. When you learn that someone grew up from nothing, security can be so important, that opposed to someone that had everything and then they just want to get ahead. Like, everyone has different stories,
right.
and when you know your own story, it really helps drive it. So, one of the things, when you first came on board, we did our leadership profiles. What were some of your thoughts about the tool?
Yeah, well, first of all, I was really impressed at the robustness of it, right? So, a lot of the questions about values, my non-negotiables, my goals, these are things that I have a practice around as a coach that are very familiar questions for me. And the practice of self-reflection is something I do regularly. So, all of that felt very familiar. What I was taken by was just how comprehensive and what a beautiful, compact summary it that made it really easy for me to share my story with you, for example. And in a very succinct way, go, yeah, here's what this looks like for me. And oftentimes, as leaders, we're so focused on delivering those results. We don't often take the time to do that self reflection, to take a step back and go, yeah, what is important to me, And the great thing about that is it helps you get really clear for yourself on what those things are, but it also makes it easier for you to share with others, to the point that you talked about earlier. But yeah, there was a lot of really beautiful depth in there, and an opportunity to kind of dig through things. And I found myself taking quite a bit of time on the values. It's interesting because, there's a recommendation that you spend a certain amount of time. You don't overthink it, right? But also, you're not just rushing through, like you're giving yourself that sweet spot to kind of be with it and see what comes to you. And I found myself going, okay, yeah, I could spend a really long time on this, especially when it comes to the narrowing down of things and the prioritizing. If I could only have one, which one would it be? Okay, that one. Okay, great. Of these two, if I could only have one, which one would it be? And really getting to the heart of it. And that was a really interesting exercise for myself. And it also helped remind me of how easy it is to fall into a trap of how I think I should be versus what's really true, and being honest with myself about, yeah, this particular thing is something that I think should be important to me. And it is to a certain extent. But this other thing is actually even more important. And giving myself the space to be honest was really valuable too.
And from experience, it's when leaders know themselves that
Mm,
they show up the best.
yeah.
And that's when the teams get excited, they participate, right? They gather around and they want to follow that leader, right? Because they know what they stand for and how they're going to show up.
Yeah.
I always say, even if someone has a quirk or a way of approaching it, if you know and it's consistent and everyone is aware, it's a lot easier to work around it,
Yeah.
you know? And we've done Clarity 4D a couple times where we
Mhm.
go through, right, and understanding our behavioral preferences as well, like understanding where you get your energy from and where you retreat to, also really powerful. So for me, I've got a lot of red energy. And it took me a long time to recognize that, wow, this is good. It's positive, right? I'm running to the fire. I'm getting things done. I'm very decisive. But if I'm not careful, people can view that as I'm railroading them. I'm not listening. I am not caring. I have no empathy.
Mm,
And so, what I think is a real strength sometimes can be viewed negatively,
mhm.
around that. So, there's great opportunity. And then to know that someone has different energy than you,
Mm-hmm.
Like you come to the table with a lot of yellow and green energy as well. You're really all about the heart.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to be a little bit more about the mind and how we're going to get there. But we're able to look at it and say, okay, how are we going to both show up? And why are we challenged on this one? And go, oh yeah, you're bringing yellow energy to this, are you?
How do we make it fun, Kathy? How do we make it longer?
Right. And I'm like, we got to get done. You got to get just sharp to the point, and the more the easier. But I've also learned, because I'm a driver and I sometimes make the mistake of just getting out there and asking the question or getting right to the point, and I forget the niceties. Right. I think I was telling you, I sent an email to a client the other day and I was very focused. I had a task I had to get done. I wanted to make sure I checked it off my checklist because I love checklists. And I just went straight to the point. But it was the first time I had spoken to him since the new year. And I'm like, oh. So after I sent the email, so I reacted, didn't respond, right? We can talk more on that. But I sent a follow-up and I said, I am so sorry. I was just trying to get the task done. Happy New Year. How was your vacation? How are you doing? Because I knew he had a lot of yellow energy, and to make sure that he's not like, shouldn't even care about me.
Happy New Year to you too, Kathy.
And it's interesting when you watch different conversations and you are aware of this, it just makes a huge difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point about knowing yourself really well, another benefit to that is then you know how to partner, right? So if I know that I have a tendency to lead with a lot of yellow energy and big picture, I like big ideas, I like to think about all the things that are possible. My first inclination isn't necessarily to go, what's the plan and the timeline for how we're going to get there? So partnering with somebody that can help bring me back down to earth and go, okay, Tracy, that's all well and good, but let's really talk about what's realistic, what's a timeline, how do we break it into chunks? Because that can be really overwhelming. That energy can be very overwhelming to folks that are just really focused on getting to the end goal, right? And sometimes I'll see connections that may not be obviously apparent because I've got the big picture always up here, right? So I'm seeing how all these things are connected, but other folks might be like, hey, we're just trying to get this thing done right now. This is distracting. So being able to partner with folks that can bring me back is really, really helpful. And it goes back to that place of authenticity, right? Where I'm going to lean into my strengths. I'm going to do my best to shore up some of where I might have blind spots, right? And continuously look for those so I'm not blindsided. And I'm going to focus mostly on my strengths and then partnering in places where I can have that other aspect to keep me and the team well-rounded. And that approach I have found helps me have more fun and more energy in my own life, but also helps me be true to myself. And to your point, there have been so many times when I've gone to my team and gone, look, I tend to be up here in big picture and, I'll share an idea and that isn't a direction. It's just, here's what's in my head. I'm also a verbal processor. So la, 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 right? So here's what I need from you. I need you to help bring me back down. I need you to ask me questions. Is this an action or an idea? Because I might forget to mention it. And then I try to do my best to frame things in a way that helps other people know I'm just thinking right now, that I'm just ideating or whatever it is. So there's an interesting balance, but it all starts with self-awareness.
It really does. And, we talk about passion of why we're doing this and where we're at. And to me, one of the stats that really blew my mind a number of years ago when I was starting the business was only about 10% of people meet their goals. And that means teams and organizations and leaders. And you think, okay, what's going on? Like, why? What are the 10%? Because 90% are not, right? So there's got to be something pretty particular that the 10% is doing. And that's why, looking at it, is it repeatable formula, right? So talking to leaders, talking to others that have been successful in delivering on results, what is it? And that's how we came up with the E3 methodology and the framework, right? And talking about, I'm going to actually share it for a second. I know we're getting close to time. But the formula around E equals Y and what we're really focused on doing it is E equals Y leaders succeed. And that's how we get to that 10%. Leaders are first expressing. So we need big ideas, right? We need that end vision because otherwise we can get too focused and narrow. So we want to have those big pictures, thinking idealistically and expressing that end vision of where we want to get to. But then we have to engage people, right? Because everyone's different. So, I'm going to engage with you very differently, Tracy, as opposed to someone that likes very detailed, give me all the facts, right? Some people care about security for their family, where other people care about, getting the new car, right? What are people's motivators and how do we engage them and speak their language, right? Because there's, if you keep speaking just the way you think and feel, you're going to not connect with everyone that you want to. But this is a three-legged chair I always think of, and you need the third, or a stool, not a chair. Stool would be the three legs. Chair would fold over. But the stool, the third one is execution, right? So to your point, you could be a high ideas person, big idea. You could be the most outgoing and friendly leader, and everyone loves going to the bar with you. But if you don't deliver results and get stuff done, then you're probably not going to be that successful leader, right? We're not going to get into that 10%. So you need to have all the legs. And then the fourth, and this kind of the seat, is the emotions, right? Bringing your full self to the table, caring, connecting to the hearts of others. This is really what makes great leaders stand apart and be part of that 10% of achieving their goals. So it's not a very, I wouldn't call this rocket science, but it is a repeatable formula, right? And you follow it every single time. And that's how we deliver on the results. And that's what great leaders, really should be focusing on, right? Teams are meant to deliver results, and leaders connect to their people and remove the obstacles, connect with people, reward them, provide feedback, etc. So hopefully, and I know we're at time, so I just want to wrap things up here. But Tracy, thank you so much for joining me. And I'm really looking forward to the boot camp on the 30th.
Yeah.
Hopefully we've inspired some others to join us on this journey. But you can follow us on YouTube. You can follow us on LinkedIn. We have more leadership nuggets available. And I don't know about you, but this was a lot of fun. So maybe we can get the technical issues out, but next time I say we start making this a regular occasion and start talking about the stories and hearing from others and the questions they have around leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. And leave us your questions on the LinkedIn profile or YouTube or anywhere that you're engaging with us. And that'll give us some insight into what we might want to focus on in our next conversation.
Perfect. Sounds good.
Awesome.
Well, hopefully we won't get snowed in, but for the rest of you, and you're having a lovely day, have a great weekend.
Bye.
Thank you.